Good evening, everyone. Welcome to the second annual Charlie's Tech Talk. I am Joe Zhu. I'm honored to be your Master's of Ceremonies tonight. And on behalf of the organizers, the University of Texas at Dallas, the Chen Family Foundation, thank you for joining us. So, this isn't just a lecture, this is a community, this is a function that we built. When we first started Charlie's Tech Talk, the purpose and design was about lifting up Asian American founders and technologists to really change the perception of how Asian Americans are perceived in the state of Texas through University of Texas at Dallas. We are especially grateful to the Center of Asian Studies and for Dennis and his amazing leadership. And we would also like to recognize the Chen Family Foundation, whose endowment supports this series and reflects the commitment to education, mentorship, and nurturing for the next generation of innovators. You have me as your MC tonight. Last time it was my beautiful wife. Unfortunately, she could not make it, so you're stuck with my lap. But tonight we'll hear from Dr. Dennis Kratz, our host and visionary, Charlie Chen, and we will have our featured guest, Arun Gupta, for our fireside and audience Q&A. So, with that, let me first introduce Dr. Dennis Kratz. He is a former dean of the B.S.E School. He is a senior associate provost at UT Dallas, the founding director for the Center of Asian Studies, and for over 2 decades he has been a voice at UTD, blending humanities, social sciences, and global studies to deepen our understanding of culture, history, and technology in the interconnected world. But most importantly, I have had the distinct pleasure of working with Dennis over the last several years for Charlie's Tech Talk, amongst a number of other initiatives. Dennis is such a wonderful human being with such a great heart for this university and for this community. I am deeply honored to welcome Dr. Dennis Kratz out here today.
Thank you. Thanks for reading the stuff I wrote and gave to you. Welcome to the University of Texas at Dallas. Welcome to the Athenaeum. And welcome to the Center for Asian Studies this evening. Let me first express some thanks to people who made this evening possible. Though some are not here, I want to make sure we recognize the magnificent staff of the Crow Museum of Asian Art. Amy Lewis Hoffman, its director, Sarah Greenberg, who is in charge of programming, and Carolyn Kim, the development officer. You will hear in a moment some more about our relationship with the Crow Museum. Also, I recognize a few friends in the audience from the university. I'd like to say hello to my good colleague, the Dean of the Hobson Blumenthal Honors College, Dean Dr. Donald Skinner. And at least one member of the advisory board for the Center of Asian Studies. Horace Balsara is not only a friend, but one of the reasons when we began the Center for Asian Studies, we knew that India and Indian America had to play a large part of it. Thank you, Horace. About the Center for Asian Studies. Our mission is to promote mutually beneficial understanding and interaction with Asia and Asian America across the spectrum of human endeavor. 2 core principles guide us. The first is that good ideas, like good people, expand their horizons and thrive when they travel to a new cultural environment. And second, everything is connected. The university is not a collection of rearrangeable parts, but rather an organic being of integrated elements, of science with humanities, with engineering, with art, commerce, with ethics, the campus with the community, and most important of all cultures with one another, in ever-shifting connection and interaction with each other. Everything is connected, nothing is still, certainly nothing at UT Dallas. Our presence this evening in this artistically and intellectually enlightening building reflects our profoundly rewarding partnership with the Crow Museum of Asian Art. Together, we aspire to serve as a centripetal force, gathering ideas from different schools, departments, and research institutes to fashion educational programs and research projects that will make UT Dallas a model of collaborative action emerging from cross-cultural understanding to produce meaningful change. And we will succeed. At a university where a student of the Western classical tradition, me, can evolve over time to become the director of a Center for Asian Studies, at a place like that, everything is possible. With an inspirational colleague like A. Lewis Hoffman, the relentless optimism of Charlie Chen and his family, and the visionary support of community leaders like those of you here tonight, what is possible has already become probable. Welcome. I look forward to joining you in listening to our guest, Dr. Arun Gupta. And now, back to you, Joe.
Thank you, Dennis. Before we go on to our next speaker, I'd like to acknowledge several special guests. First, she actually is not here today. She was a speaker at our last Charlie's Tech Talk and has been a huge supporter of Charlie's Tech Talk and the initiative of what we are trying to build. It is Texas State Representative Angie Chen-Button. She's a fierce advocate for education, economic development, and innovation, and most importantly for the Asian American community. So thank you, Angie, for all your leadership and service. We miss you there. Also, I would like to recognize Director Simon Lai today from the Taiwanese Trade Office. Thank you, Simon, for coming. David Hu, the Honorary Chairman of the Texas Chinese American Chamber of Commerce. Thank you, David. Lawrence Chung, the Greater Dallas Taiwanese Chamber of Commerce President. Kathy Lee, the President of the North Texas Taiwanese Chamber of Commerce. One of my special guests, Sarah Haik, from the National Asian Chamber of Commerce. And lastly, Brandon Morton from the Economic Development Office at the City of Richardson. Okay, so it is my honor and privilege to introduce the visionary behind this series, who also happens to be my father-in-law, Mr. Charlie Chen. Charlie, probably everyone knows, is a successful entrepreneur and a dedicated community leader, tirelessly strengthening the innovations and international ties to North Texas. He is the CEO of DFW Technology. He's built a company built on service, trust, and tech excellence. And even at the age of 70, has moved this company into a new direction because he's going to live till 120. In his civic life, he broke barriers. So he was the first Asian American as the chair of the Richardson Chamber of Commerce. And he expanded global partnerships and boosted the city's tech and entrepreneurial scene. In fact, he started the first startup innovator in the city of Richardson, of which Arun was a member of. So, in addition to that, for his efforts, he was awarded the Richardson Citizen of the Year as well as the International Economic Development Council Citizen Award. So please join me in welcoming Charlie Chen.
Thank you, Joe. I need to show my last one. Yes. Yeah, before, welcome. Before the, I think we certainly want to ask live Dr. Gupta to share with us his experience. That's why you are here. But I'd like to, using this opportunity to share some of the questions that have been asked when some friends coming over. And many of you might have the curiosity about what is Charlie's talk, tech talk, and what is my relationship with Dr. Chris in the Center of Asian Studies, as well as ETD, right? I'd like to spend a few moments. And I told Joe that if give me 3 to 5 minutes. If I'm over 5 minutes, here is my offer. Everyone will be invited to the after event, private dinner at the casino, about 5 minutes away from here. Free drink, free dinner. Okay? So let's start to count. 5 minutes. If I'm over 5 minutes, everybody is welcome for that, okay?
Starting.
First of all, why Charlie's tech talk? Yeah. 25 years ago, there are about 100 employees under one of my company called Skyven Technologies, and many are English is a second language, foreign, and they don't, although they have a high talent, but they don't know how to speak well or communicate well. So we formed a Toastmaster chapter called DFW Tech Talk. That was 25 years ago. And that chapter was so successful that one of the best in the region, Toastmaster chapters. Yeah. So yesterday was DFW Tech Talk. Today is Charlie's Tech Talk. Okay? Now, second question is what Charlie got to do with one of the outstanding scholars in our UTD and the community circle, Dr. Dennis Chris. Dennis Chris and his wife, Abby, they've been long time UTD's executive. Actually, I believe Abby's position is even higher than that time Dean Dennis. Yeah. So we've been our family been friends with Chris' family for over 2 decades. Yeah. And when about 6 years ago, that when Dennis wanted to create this Center of Asian Studies, which is David Koo also in that initial meeting too. Our family decided to establish endowment to support it. And one of the programs we come out with is called Charlie's Tech Talk. To not only support the Center of Asian Studies, but also to the vision of this great man, Dennis Chris' vision about the multicultures, the technology, and arts and technology. Yeah, that's how we started. I'm glad this is second. By the time the third one will become a tradition for this great university and engineers. Okay. I also like to share with you that my relationship with the city, that when I served as a chair of the Chamber of Commerce back in 2015, I started called DFW Innovation Center at that time, one of the first in our city, and went through so many startups. Tonight you have one of the successful example that I used to call from $2,000 to $200 million company, Skyven Technologies. Yeah. But that later, the city of Richardson come out from their innovation center, innovation district, and now today we call Richardson IQ, Innovation Quarter, which is a lot of activity will come out from there. With that, we city designed a 1,200 acres. From the original we work with is only 400 acre Arapaho redevelopment, and then become 3 times bigger, called Richardson IQ. And as of today, we come out with, since Richardson is leading the innovation quarter, so we create another organization called DFW AI Innovation Center, focus on AI, with 20,000 square footage to incubate, to invest with all the AI ideas and the innovations. Yeah. And I have asked my team to print out the brochure. You can also click on about this. Yeah. Hopefully, through this, we can generate many of the Skyven Technologies. And Dr. Gupta will tell you how he developed that business tonight. Okay? And also, how many minutes? So, don't worry, everyone got a free dinner. Yeah. Joe mentioned a little bit about how I encountered Dr. Gupta. It's through that our innovation center. Because when I served as a chair for the chamber, one of his boss, Dr. Gupta working for TI, Texas Instruments, and his boss also serving in the Chamber of Commerce. And one day, his boss, and he probably didn't know, which is a lot of his credit, because for the boss to ask a friend a favor to give to his employee, because his employee, Dr. Gupta, is about to kick off a venture. Say, Charlie, can you help him? I'm right in the right position. So Dr. Gupta showed up. And I watched that in 8 years, from paying the $2,000 monthly rent to now. Yeah. So tonight you will hear the first hand about his story. Okay? Yeah. I'm sorry I forgot your boss name, the research affairs boss. You know he was in charge of research affairs, TIC. Yeah, your boss. Okay, so many people also ask tonight, especially community friends, where is your wife, which is my boss? Well, as a personal note, and then we'll stop there. My wife always supporting what we've been doing for the family, but 2 days ago, she just had a surprising visit to New York. My second daughter in New York City that needed help, so she cannot be with you tonight. But some people also curiosity about our family, and let me share a personal note, so that we stop there in time. Arun and I, we have 3 adult children, and the first daughter, Carol, was last year with us. He's beautiful, and he's Miss Chinatown, USA, the whole USA, and he's San Francisco too, and then this young guy is so brave to marry her. Maybe because he's taller than her. Yeah. And then we have a second daughter in New York, married to a Wall Street guy. And as you know that sorry, Wall Street moving some of the function to Dallas, called Your Street in downtown Dallas. And his office also have some people who will be here in Dallas. So I'm so glad that they are coming to Dallas, because I remember when my second son-in-law visited us, we need to prepare a multiple screen for him, because he needed to make $1 million a day as a profit to survive. As managing fund, count how much money you manage to make $1 million a day, every day. That's how high pressure when you do from money to money. Yeah. And then the youngest son is sitting beside with me. Patrick, can you stand? Yeah. Patrick is our youngest son, and he is a data scientist, and had a very nice job. But since about a year ago, I asked him to try to fit into my shoes. Yeah, and so he's been working on that. So with that, I think that I probably answered all the 4 questions that have been asked. And then you got a free dinner, okay? It's only 5 minutes away. After today, we reserved maybe 30 people. This crowd, no problem. There's a big restaurant there. So, Mikosina, remember that? It's right, Koi and Campbell right here. So I welcome everyone to join us, because last year we have a good time with another featured speaker called Nan Wang. I tell you what, Nan Wang runs a gaming industry, a company called Sleeper. It's also $100 million, $100 to $200 million company now. Yeah. So, if you have $1 million idea, and you are about $10 million value and want to make or create $100 million impact to the community, I'm sure Dr. Chris and I would love to invite you to be the featured speaker. Okay? Yeah, with that, thank you very much. And I hope we have all the interesting contents for you to share and then end up with a happy dinner later with me, okay? Thank you. I think on purposely it's over 5 minutes.
Yeah, I knew that 5 minutes was a zero chance right there. All right, so it is my pleasure to introduce tonight's featured guest, Arun Gupta, founder and CEO of Skyven Technologies. Arun is a trailblazer in climate tech, leading the charge on industrial decarbonization. At Skyven, he and his team have created innovative solutions to cut carbon emissions for industries while keeping them competitive. I would say one of the most impressive aspects of Arun's entrepreneurial journey is really taking, from a deep tech standpoint, concepts to application to execution. I've done a number of deep tech investments, and I've looked at what he's done, and it's incredibly impressive for him along his entrepreneurial journey. Recently was announced from the Department of Energy $145 million grant, as well as additional funding as well. So tonight, in his fireside chat, he'll share his journey and his tech breakthroughs. But first and foremost, let's please welcome Arun Gupta to the stage.
All right. Live?
All right. So, I also told him prior to yesterday, I said, you know what, if there's a chance for me to be combative and push back on any of his answers, I will try to, just to make things entertaining.
Sounds great.
Arun, so my first question is, can you walk me through your shift? So you were at TI, you were leading designs on microscopic mirrors in the semiconductor side. What sparked this? And your first product was the intelligent mirror array. What sparked it, and how did it evolve into the broader industrial decarbonization concept?
Yeah, it's a good question. So, there's two reasons, right? The first one is super cliche. So, I believe that it's my mission on Earth to try to make the world a better place, right? So I hate saying it out loud, but I have to because it's true. And to me, I have two things that personally matter more to me, most to me, and that's healthcare and the environment. And so I did my master's work in healthcare. I worked at my first job was at Medtronic biomedical devices, and I got a little put off by how slowly the space moves in FDA regulation. So it's for good reason, but it wasn't as attractive to me. And so that left the environment. And so I wanted to do something in the environment. And then the other big driver is I'm really motivated by using technology to create value. And so then where I landed, or where I was a designer for Texas Instruments for the DLP, or digital light products, microscopic mirror array, the EMP they call it, which powers projectors. And so, became an expert at manipulating light from a projector bulb in order to paint a picture on screen. And so the concept was, can I utilize that expertise to manipulate light from a much bigger light source, the sun, in order to focus it and concentrate it down and capture the heat of the sun. And so that was the original idea. Now, the challenge, of course, there was that that's a sort of a technology or science idea. And the challenge at the time, the cost of solar has gone way down since then, but at the time, the big problem with solar was that it was too expensive. And so I thought that using this concept of modularity, at Texas Instruments, we spent so much time and money, $1 billion, focused on the design of one single microinverter to perfect it, and then manufacture billions or trillions of them. And so I thought I would apply that same concept to a bigger mirror in order to drive down the cost of solar. So that was the original concept, and that's what sparked the idea.
That's incredible, especially considering you didn't have $1 billion to really start this idea, right? So you started out in a garage, like all great founders do. Tell me about that process, ultimately the pains of that, and trying to do this essentially on a limited budget while still working at TI.
Yeah, that was a very challenging time in my life, and I'll tell you all why. So maybe 2 weeks after I made the decision that I'm going to go all in on this concept, on this idea, I got in a really, really bad motorcycle accident on 75, like right over there, just really 75 in George Bush. And that put me in a wheelchair for a year. I was in the hospital for like, I don't know, 3 or 4 months. Initially afterwards, all the horrible stuff. So the first prototype that I built, actually built in my garage while recovering. So I was confined to my house. I was in a wheelchair. So I built it from a wheelchair. This is why it was especially challenging. So, but it was also something that was a major factor in the recovery that I was able to make. Because after being through such a traumatic event, you need it's really helpful for a patient who's been through something like that to have something that really drives them and motivates them to get out of the hospital bed and get better. And for me, building this company was that motivation. And so, I still remember just getting the wheelchair out of my door into the garage because it was stepped. That was the thing that took 20 minutes to figure out how to get the wheelchair out. Because at the time I lived alone. It wasn't married yet. So that was quite the adventure, and led to a big journey.
That's incredible. That's wonderful. So to move a little bit further on, right? You've developed this intelligent mirror array. Then you talked about your story in terms of touring all these various manufacturing plants, and then essentially you made a pivot outside from the mirror array to now your core product, which is the Arcturus steam generator heat pump. Arcturus, yeah. Why? That's a pretty big pivot, right? What drove that? And explain to this crowd the decision-making process associated with that, to really go down to really move to such a capital-intensive new product.
Yeah, so that's another challenge. So I essentially spent at least 5 years, working on this intelligent mirror array, this big array of mirrors to concentrate sunlight. And when I first moved into the DFW Innovation Center with Charlie, that's what we were working on. But I remember a particular instance where I was talking to a customer. It was a large dairy manufacturer, a major brand He was in a conference room speaking to one of their engineers at a big, giant dairy, a butter manufacturing facility in California. And that engineer was bragging to me about a project that engineer had led for heat recovery. And that project saved more money, saved more fossil fuels and more carbon, and cost less from a capital standpoint than what I was trying to sell. And so I was like, wait a minute, 1, 2, 3. It's really better in every regard. What am I doing here? I was trying to sell you just a straight up inferior product. But then I was like, wait a minute, you did this project over here. It was a huge plant. You did this over here. You could also do the same project over there and over there. Why don't you? And the engineer explained that, well, this is a capital problem, in that the engineer just couldn't get the capital approval to go and build these projects over and over again, so they could only do it once because we got approval once. And so I thought, well, maybe that's the problem we can solve. And so, that was the seed that caused a big pivot from being a technology company to being essentially a finance company where we work with financiers to finance heat recovery projects. And that was actually the first pivot. That did not bring us to this Arcturus steam generated heat pump that we do now. That pivoted us away from the solar technology to being a tech agnostic developer and financier of projects in industrial. And then, so from there, what happened was we were working with a big ethanol production facility in the Midwest. And we identified this heat pump technology that would be a great fit for the facility. And we said, okay, this is a great fit, and so we got the customer interested. The customer started showing up large money to say, okay, we're willing to pay. Let's do this. I said, great. Then we hired a well-known engineering firm, out of Texas, and top engineering firm, excellent firm, and the project went terribly. It went very poorly. The system that they designed for us, probably would have worked just fine. It was just 4x too expensive. And so the customer, seeing the price tag and saying, like, okay, this is way more than we expected. They said, well, sorry, we're out. We're not going to write the checks. Like, we're not going to do this. And so we at Skyven lost this deal, and it was devastating at the time because it was like 10 times larger than anything else we were working on at that time. It was a huge deal. And so we went essentially back to the drawing board and said, what happened here? How do we lose this? And what we eventually figured out was that the technology, that heat pump technology, was not a commonplace technology. It was not an industry best practice. It was still very cutting edge. But the challenge was that it had only ever been deployed in one-off projects that were custom engineered from the ground up by an engineering firm like the one that we hired, or some team of engineers. So, that a project like that's only going to get built if someone's willing to pay the bill for something totally custom. And if any of you have ever like looked at the cost of something completely custom versus the cost of something standard off the shelf, custom's not 10% more expensive than off the shelf. Custom is 5 times more expensive, 4 times more expensive. It's multiple X more expensive than off the shelf. And so we went back and said, how can we, as a team of innovators, turn this technology, which is incredible, but has only ever been built full custom, into something that is standardized, and can we engineer it into a product that then becomes available off the shelf and drive its cost down 4 or 5x? And so that was the challenge we put in front of ourselves. And that's what led to us becoming a heat pump company with a product called Arcturus that is a large-scale heat pump. So it's actually solving the same problem as the original solar thermal in a totally different way.
It's a lot of roads to basically, go down. Let me ask you just in terms of the mindset and thought process regarding your business model, right? So you're doing essentially energy as a service. I did a little due diligence. There's other various competitors that are selling outright units. Why go down this energy as a service model? I guess walk me through the thought process associated with that.
Yeah, so it's a bit related to the story I was just telling in that, that initial pivot that we did when I was talking that dairy manufacturing engineer and said, I wish I could do more of these heat recovery projects, I just can't get the money. That's what led to the energy as a service idea, right? We were coming from the solar space, and in solar, you can get solar as a service through a power purchase agreement, solar PPA. You can even do that residentially, like folks will come to your house and you sign some agreement where you're going to pay them for electricity, but you don't have to pay for the solar panels. So it was the same concept. Only we said we could use this, we could apply this concept to help finance energy efficiency projects in the industrial sector. So that's what led to the energy as a service model. And then we kept that model through and applied it to the heat pump. Because at the end of the day, right, our heat pumps cost anywhere between $10 and $30 million each, which is a lot of capital even for a large manufacturing facility. So it helps to say, like, hey, we, Skyven and our investors, we will invest, $10, $20, $30, $40 million into your plant. And we'll take responsibility for this new cutting-edge technology to actually work and produce the benefits. And only if it produces the benefits do you pay us.
That's great. I'm using this to now move into the finance question, which is basically the one thing that I really wanted to ask you this whole time. You were awarded $145 million from the Department of Energy, various tiers. I think the first tier was a $15 million project. But certainly, through the news and through the change in the administration, they essentially retracted that grant. I won't ask you to comment on anything political or anything of that sort or your thoughts associated with that, but walk me through the mindset of what you as a company are now going to do. How do you bring that to your team? How are you pivoting now in terms of, is that changing anything? That's a relatively large blow that it seems, when I speak with you on the phone, we say, we're going to keep going. So, walk me through that. Tell me about that.
Yeah. So the context here, we spent about 2 years applying for and winning this $145 million contract with the U.S. government to build a portfolio of these giant steam generating heat pumps. And that process was super intense. It's like 500 pages of documentation, multiple trips to B.S.E, all that, and then we won the award, and got it fully under contract after going through a year-long negotiation process with the federal government. And then 3 months later, no, maybe 4 months later, it was rescinded via a 2-page form email from an email address I'd never received anything from before. So I thought it was an issue, I thought it was spam. And then the next, so I got it in the middle of the night. So I thought for sure it's spam. But then the next morning, you know, I start seeing articles of how $5 billion worth of federal grants and funding and contracts into energy was canceled the night before. And I was like, oh, it's real. So that was another tough period. You know, and so I learned a lot about, you know, this happened, you know, a couple of years after the pandemic, and I learned a lot about how to handle a crisis and how to not handle a crisis well by watching how leaders handled the pandemic. And the leaders that were the most like knowledge forward, upfront, straightforward, that were like, okay, this is what's going on, this is where we are, and updated regularly, daily, weekly, whatever it was, were much, much better received and respected than leaders that ignored it or swept it under the rug, you know, that type of stuff. And so, you know, I took inspiration from that in terms of leading the company through that period and trying to be very upfront, holding all hands meetings, you know, every few days about what was going on, how we were going to handle it, and ultimately, what it ended up causing us to do was, you know, the technology that we're bringing out to market is a revolutionary and cutting-edge technology. And like most of those types of technologies, it's on a cost curve. The costs go down over time. Our initial plan was to get it out to market as fast as possible, even if that means it's more expensive initially. And we have a big amount of funding from the government to help bring down the cost. And that was directly consistent with the intent of that funding. The intent of that funding was to accelerate the deployment of this energy technology and put America at the forefront of deployment of this tech. And so we were trying to be very aligned with that goal. And so when the funding was rescinded, what it caused us to do is say, like, okay, we cannot just push this out the door as fast as possible at a higher cost. We have to slow down and focus on cost reducing the technology now and not later. So while it did slow us down in deployment, you know, since then we have cut the price tag on the technology by 45% versus what it was 2 years ago, through further innovation over the last 2 years. So that's, you know, and that helps us be able to deploy the technology today without any grants, which was always the plan. It was never the plan to always need a large funding from the government. It was just a sequential, like, let's get it out to market and then let's bring down the cost. And now let's just bring down the cost and then we'll get it out to market.
That's great. That's great. Now, Skyven at this point has 2 offices, right? So you have one in California, which you reside in, and then you have one in Farmers Branch. What drove, I guess, the second location expansion, and how do you coordinate these teams and operations and manage this from a leadership standpoint?
Yeah, it's a good question. So we're actually a remote-first organization. So we grew a lot during COVID, and so our team is spread out not just among those 2 locations, but really spread out across the country. We've got people in Seattle, San Francisco, you know, Los Angeles, Texas, the Midwest, and the East Coast, from Boston down to Florida. So we're really spreading the tech out there. And we have a small team in Spain and a team in Vietnam. So we're a global company, of about 40 people. The two offices that you mentioned are primarily focused on sales, right? So, we started here in Dallas. Our headquarters is here at UW, and then we had initial sales traction in Central Valley, California. So that's that office. But the team is really distributed. So managing a distributed team across all those different time zones is definitely challenging. But we all lived through the pandemic, and we all have this experience of working virtually, and so I can't say our experience is really substantially different. Maybe we just put more focus on getting that as right as we can, because like a must go back into a work order is not really viable when you got people so spread out as we do.
Well, so a lot of companies did start to pull people back. You have to go to work because they were finding productivity, innovation was dropping essentially over time. How have you been able to maintain that?
For one, it's people finding people that are really self-motivated and driven, and then making sure that there's really great alignment with what the team is trying to do, so that everyone knows what they're responsible for, what they need to deliver on, in what time frame. So when someone's self-motivated and they know what they need to go do, then they go and do it. They don't need to come into an office to do that. They don't need anyone looking over their shoulder.
Certainly hire the right people first, right?
The right people are critical. Yeah.
So you started Skyven in 2013, right?
That's right.
So 13 years, founder, CEO, you have gone through various ups, downs, pivots, successes, failures. At the core of it, from a leadership standpoint, what are some of the biggest leadership lessons that you have taken from this?
So leadership, oh man, I should probably talk a lot about this. Let's see, so a couple of them, I find that direct and candid conversation is important, while at the same time being sensitive. And it's something that I'm constantly getting better at. I think I do a decent job at it, but there's always a lot of room to improve in this area. It's like, how do you be direct so that people don't have to interpret what you mean, but still be sensitive, because at the end of the day, you're human, and we're talking to your whole team, we're all humans here. We all have feelings. That balance and getting that right. I find that there are ways to be both direct, candid, and sensitive, but it takes a lot of patience and intentionality to do that. And whenever I'm trying to move fast, and it's like I don't have time to think through like how do I say this in a way that will be received well, but it's still direct, that's when either I say things too bluntly, which if you can't tell, I tend towards that side, or less often I'll be not direct and then people won't quite understand exactly what they have to do. And that's what we talked about, not so good, especially in the remote team.
So, from a leadership standpoint, though, I mean, are all the executives together, or are they split as well?
Everyone's split, yeah.
So how do you manage these kind of, is it you determining the foresight of where Skyven is going, the industry is going? I mean, I guess the question is, what keeps you up at night, and is it the same, is every executive sharing the same thought, or is it multiple various thoughts on that aspect?
Yeah, what we do at Skyven, we have weekly leadership calls, where we try to go through, what's going on, and then we have quarterly virtual retreats and then annual in-person retreats. We find that cadence works. And then in addition, we try to get together in person whenever we can. In fact, like for example, my CTO, who lives in Boston, flew down to DFW yesterday because he knew that I was going to be here, and our head of R&D, he lives here in DFW. He's been with the company for a long time. And so the three of us could get together. So like two of them are going to be here, I'm going to go down too, right? So that's an example of an ad hoc, meeting in person. So that's, in terms of how we share ideas and, set direction, get aligned, that kind of stuff. In terms of what keeps me up at night, so other than my 1-year-old and my 4-year-old, in the industrial sector, the margins are so thin, and the requirement for high productivity is so high and stringent. These manufacturing facilities cannot afford to go down. And so that makes them very risk averse. And so while sometimes they may have groups to talk about innovation, and they have a manufacturing company may have an innovation group, or may have a CTO or something like that. Actual deployment at scale of new technology in the industrial sector is very, very hard to do. And getting through that barrier is one of the biggest challenges that keeps me up at night, constantly thinking about how can we break through that barrier. And so energy as a service model, and the offering that we put forth is an example of us really going the extra mile to try to get past that barrier, but the barrier still exists and it is challenging.
So is it safe to say you're targeting more new construction at this point, to save some of that aspect, or are you still going after the existing, or are you just basically trying to talk to everybody?
No, so we're mainly brownfield. So brownfield means we're targeting existing manufacturers. So we are retrofit on existing manufacturing facilities. The reason for that is because the number of new manufacturing facilities that is built annually is very small. Manufacturing in not only in America, but most of the world, plants already exist. So especially in the US, though, some of our customers have been, the plants have been in operation for 100 years. Right? So they're not, they just keep running. So rather than building new plants.
So I'm going to go to a couple rapid fire questions associated with entrepreneurship. What do you wish you knew before you started Skyven?
That's well. So what do I?
Crystal ball. What could you tell yourself?
So the thing about it, the reason why I laugh is naivety is an asset. If I knew how hard it would be, I would not have started Skyven. I just don't know. It's not, I can't say I wish I knew how hard it would be, because then I never would have started. That wouldn't have been any good. No, I would say one of the things that I wish I knew is you have to sell it before you build it. You don't build it and then sell it. So how can you sell it before you build it? You have to essentially virtualize the product that you want to build. Like create it virtually, create it, and you build hardware, right? Not software. So you have to figure out what is the hardware going to look like? What is it? What are its specs going to be? You have to visualize images, create images of it, renderings, whatever it is, specifications, and then create marketing materials like it exists, and then go and sell it as if it exists. And if you can sell it, then you get permission to build it. But if you can't sell it, don't build it. So much is written every day about Elon Musk, right? But like, this is, you see him doing this every day. It's like, oh, well, 10 years ago, he was like, we're going to have a self-driving car, and it'll be next year, and it'll do X, Y, and Z. That's him selling it before he's built it. Now, like, you don't necessarily know exactly how long it's going to take you to build it before you build it. And sometimes it takes longer, and that has happened to him and it happens to everyone. But that approach works.
As you were saying that, I literally was thinking in my head, oh, let's see on the playbook.
Yeah.
What has surprised you most about this journey?
Probably my own stubbornness in keeping on grinding. Like I would have expected that I would have said, like, you know what, like let's go do something else. And I'm still grinding on this.
That's great. You did mention that you have a 4-year-old and a 1-year-old. How has having children changed your life as an entrepreneur, as a CEO, as the new direction from a company standpoint? How has being a father changed you as a CEO?
Efficiency. I just have so much less time to do all the things that I need to do, and it's just demands efficiency, right? It's like, I don't want to look back at my kids and regret spending all the time in the company. But at the same time, the company is really important to me, and I really want it to be successful. It takes a lot of time and effort to make that happen. So like I have to take me too, and the only way is to just become a lot more efficient. And I think that's made me a better leader and a better entrepreneur, because I used to try to do too much myself. And some of my team might still say that about me, but with kids, I have to say, like, okay, go talk to such and such teammate, and I have to sometimes just trust my team to go and do stuff, even if I want to, make it perfect myself. I want more to read my kid bedtime story.
That's great. I have a 3-year-old as well, so it's a constant battle.
You know what it's like.
Being out there versus I just want to read to him. What has been the biggest bottleneck from a company standpoint? Capital, talents, customers, convincing people of this new technology? I mean, what is, if there was something that could open up for you, what would change there?
Yeah, I think it's the bottleneck, as I mentioned earlier, is the conservativeness of the industrial customer base and their aversion to actually adopting new technology at scale versus study after study or like advanced pilots over years that pilots don't make companies, like selling at scale makes a company. And that in itself is related to capital. So like there are, these Cinderella stories of very, very few companies out there raising huge amounts of money without a ton of traction, but like for the 99.999% of everyone else out there, like sales generates capital, and then capital then helps you scale and get more sales, and so that's the relation between sales and capital.
Speaking of sales and capital, you have done roughly, $10 million in raise? I looked at my pitch book.
Yeah, it's closer to 20.
Okay, so dilutive funding wise, 20 plus private credit line, I believe, with 90 or something.
So we have now $300 million worth of product credit, essentially product finance credit for building these systems. So we have a couple $100 million worth of sales backlog, $300 million worth of private credit to build our backlog and still scale and build more in the future, plus something like 20 million in equity in the company, for essentially, money for a rainy day type stuff.
So that's very impressive. From a funding standpoint, I guess walk the crowd through in terms of, the challenges of raising capital, both dilutive and non-dilutive, and I guess any lessons to take away from that?
Yeah, let's see. So, so one lesson I learned actually quite recently is that VC is not necessarily the answer. So venture capital, there's an aura of sexiness around venture capital, and it seems like if you're a founder and you can raise venture capital, then as a founder, a lot of founders judge their worth as a founder based on their ability to raise venture capital, and that is unfortunate because venture capital is one way to finance a business, and it can fit the business model, it may not fit a business model, it can fit at times but not other times for the same business. Financing through revenue is the best way to finance a business. Financing through debt and credit, the financing through grants, and then financing through other sorts of structured arrangements. For most businesses, the vast majority of businesses, is better than venture capital. And that's not mind-blowing advice if you find that out there. People say that don't raise venture capital unless you need it. And so for me, it's probably not just the advice. It's really internalizing and living it.
Yeah, but as a former venture capitalist and angel investor, I would say, I think it's 90% of the funds don't return the investment money, so you've got to pick them right as well. Okay, I'm going to ask one more question, and then we'll open up to Q&A. But if there's one lesson that you wanted everyone to take away from your story, your journey, how you built this, what would it be?
I would say resilience, I would say if you keep grinding harder and longer than everyone else, you are essentially guaranteed to be successful, right? It's like eventually, you just keep on swinging enough times that you take the luck aspect out, and you're going to hit. And that's been my experience. We've taken a lot of swings, and a lot of them haven't hit, and stuff that I've worked on, put everything that I had into for 5 years, has dissolved, in a matter of days. That's happened to me multiple times. We got to just keep on grinding, and the lessons build, and the momentum builds, and it gets there.
That's wonderful. All right, so we're going to open up for Q&A. I will walk to you with the microphone. Go closer first. I see you guys.
Yeah, it's a STEM major. You graduate, undergraduate, all the way to Ph.D. You are all in the STEM. So what's your suggestion for those people still in the STEM majors, and you are now in the real business world, okay? Next door there is a whole business school there. How the STEM major like you would tell the others still following you now, 10 years behind you, what they need to do or prepare in the, while they are still have time to mess around in school?
STEM majors?
Yeah, or studying.
Yeah, I think it's about communication.
And maybe for the business major too, vice versa.
Yeah, I would like for a STEM major, I would focus on the communication aspect. I think that's really critical. STEM majors, stereotypically are very intelligent, but the EQ and communication aspects of being able to communicate the vision and the brilliance is something to focus on early and keep that focus. Because, especially today with AI, just knowledge. AI commoditizes knowledge, right? I tell my team this, we have all the knowledge of humankind, right, all in our pockets, right? We've got, Nobel laureates, right, all, a few thumb presses away. So just knowledge isn't so much an advantage anymore. It's being able to synthesize that knowledge, which is STEM majors often very good at, and then communicate it, and that's why it's a communication.
Hi, Dr. Gupta. Thanks for sharing some of your tips. My name is Angela. Sorry, I'm with B.S.E. I used to work on solar with large commercial industrial projects, and we talked a lot about just kind of stabilizing the grid and also just having really here from Houston. We had a really bad hurricane a couple years ago where the whole grid was down. So I was just wondering, how does your technology deal with natural disasters, and how do you kind of do that moving forward?
Oh, good question. I like that question. So our technology, Skyven Arcturus, is grid responsive. So what that means is, so it's a giant heat pump. It consumes several megawatts of electricity. But it is grid responsive in that we built in the software and intelligence into the control system such that it monitors loads on the grid and electricity prices in real time. And as loads on the grid spike and electricity prices spike, it will actually turn itself off and revert back to the existing gas boilers at the manufacturing site to take that multi-megawatt load off the grid. And then when electricity prices come back down, and at times you actually get oversupply of electricity on the grid due to, like, for example, here in Texas, you get a lot of wind. So on a windy day, especially at night, windy nighttime, you get a lot of extra electricity. It'll actually consume the excess electricity and reduce the amount of natural gas that the facility has to burn. So that this grid interactivity has the economic benefit to a manufacturing facility of energy arbitrage, where they can take advantage of low electricity prices and low gas prices, both, while having the benefit to like the overall public, like all of us are all consumers on the grid, of helping stabilize the grid and also stabilize grid prices, right? Because at the end of the day, if someone wants to build a new power plant, they want high prices, like the periods of time when grid prices are high, is great for them. But the times when the grid prices are super low, it's really bad for them. And so what we end up doing is we end up consuming electricity and then actually stabilizing the price of electricity when there's low demand, which helps power plant builders build more power plants, which more power is good for everyone. While at the same time not driving up the cost when electricity is more expensive. And the context here, for those of you who don't know, is that electricity prices, like especially here in Texas, change every 15 minutes. So electricity prices on the wholesale market are changing in real time, even though you may have a fixed monthly bill on your bill to the utility. That utility is buying its power on, potentially on a real time market.
I don't know. Oh, thank you. Hi, Dr. Gupta, and my name is Mia. I'm UT Southwestern student, and my major is nutrition. So I'm going to work in healthcare environmental soon. So my question would be that, how do you apply your technology or your business model to the healthcare environmental or nutrition field?
That's a good question, and so I'm not very familiar with healthcare and nutrition, especially these days, and working on energy for so long. But doing stuff on an as a service model, whatever you're selling, is something that I can't say that we at Skyven pioneered the as a service model. There's many folks. Like the Dollar Shave Club, was the, razors to shave, as a service instead of having to buy Gillette razors from the store. Right, so there are many examples of this. And so this business model overall, can be applied, like subscription models, like buying meals, like they come in the mail rather than having to buy them. You go into the grocery store, these sorts of subscription models, I think can be applied across many different sectors.
How about food processing industry?
The food processing industry. So, if you're talking about food processing, I would say, so in food processing, in most manufacturing, equipment for the factory is purchased typically as a capital purchase. And so if you want to build a manufacturing facility, if you have a new product and you want to manufacture it, it's very expensive to build a manufacturing plant. A lot of folks use co-packers. That's a way to solve that. So the co-packer is essentially manufacturing as a service. You could also think about equipment leases. I don't know. There's a lot of different ways to skin the cat when it comes to the financial mechanisms.
Thank you.
So, thank you so much for sharing your knowledge and experience. I'm a student at GSAM, and part of my question was asked by Charlie sir, but with this increasing technology, with the growing technology each and every day, I would want to ask a nugget of advice you would give to us students. So, as we are going into this AI world, as you said that we have everything in our mobile and we can access everything, but still there is something that we need as a set of knowledge. So, what is that one nugget of advice you would give for us as a student in this growing technology generation?
I would go back to synthesizing and then communicating. And the synthesizing piece is, for example, let's say you ask AI a prompt and it gives you, we've all done this at this point, right? It gives you this big long, intelligent sounding spiel about whatever you asked it about. If you don't have a really strong feel, almost intuitive sense of what you're asking about, it can be, you just kind of take what it gives you and you're like, all right, that's it. But if you do have that sense, because you've got a lot of experience and background and knowledge about it, you can take what it gives you and say, no, that's not right. I understand what AI is essentially searching the internet for me and synthesizing the result out of internet searches. I need to give it this additional context and this additional prompting to get it to give me the real answer that I want. You can't know that if you don't have the familiarity with it already. And that's part of what I mean by synthesizing. like you kind of like already need to have a good idea of what the answer is in order for AI to give you the right answer. And then of course, communicating, you know, AI will write nice things for you, but again, if you don't, the way it communicates may not actually be the right way for what you're trying to do. And so you kind of already have to know what you want. AI just makes it easier and faster to do it. If you don't already know, then AI, I think like doesn't work very well. That's my opinion.
Dr. Gupta, thank you. Very inspiring story. So when I think of heat pumps, I think of heating and cooling. I assume you're addressing the heating side of it right now. That's the brownfield application. What about the greenfield applications, data centers, where heating is a huge issue, and so they've got to be able to cool them fast. They're talking about data centers in space, but they don't know how to cool them fast enough. How can you take Skyven to that next level of addressing cooling as a solution?
Yeah, that's a good question. So let's see, first a little bit of context. Any and every heat pump simultaneously heats and cools. So ours does as well. It heats and generates steam for the process. And it's cooling a waste heat stream. So it's actually taking heat from that's being dumped out into the atmosphere, cooling that, and then heating by generating steam. So for data centers, the interesting opportunity, and there have been like a few cases at least thought about this in the world, but an interesting opportunity is to cool the data center and take the heat that's being rejected from the data center and then upgrade it to generate either hot water or steam for district heating. So yeah, I believe at UTD here we have district heating. Most campuses in the U.S. have district heating, and then many major cities in the U.S. have district heating, like New York City's steam tunnels are the most famous example of those. But it takes a huge amount of energy to heat a district heating system. So if you extract heat from these gigantic, gigascale data centers and then use that to heat a community, that's super efficient use of energy, which is a pretty cool concept. The challenge of making that actually happen is the logistics of co-location. You need to have the district heating network already there, with the data center, and they all need to be in the same place, and just kind of. And then all the parties need to work together, and so actually developing and building a project like that is super challenging, and that's why I want to say, like in Finland, I read something about Microsoft doing this with a new data center in Finland to heat a city in Finland, so the concept exists, and I don't know if they built it or whether they just announced that they were going to build it. That's the reason why we at Skyven have pursued that model with a lot of effort is just because the challenge of actually making all these stars align to actually make that happen.
Very inspiring story, especially knowing the origins of how it all started in the garage. Just on a lighter note, love your name, Skyven Technologies, Arcturus. Having come up with this name, it kind of points to galactic origins. I wonder what the name of your kid is.
Yeah. In my kids' foreign Indian names. No, so the origin behind the company name, Skyven. So when I was in high school, I built a website that I called Skyven.net, and that was a search engine, sort of like Dogpile. It essentially searched existing search engines, like a bunch of search engines, and compiled the results. If anyone remembers Dogpile, so I gave myself here. And so I recycled the name from when I was in high school. And that name from when I was in high school actually came out of a video game. There was a level in this video game called Skyven and I really liked the name Skyven. And so that's where Skyven came from. But then, with the name Skyven that I recycled from when I was a kid, it kind of pointed us toward this galactic theme. So you're right, Arcturus. Arcturus, for those of you who don't know, is a giant orange star in the sky. It's an orange star. And so that was, it's an orange star. It's a big hot, thing. So it's heat. That's the theme. And then we have a software product called Galileo, also on theme there. So we'll probably stick with that theme.
Dr. Gupta, I have a question. I know that your customers are the industrial customers of energy intensive sectors, but having family in Atlantic Canada, the word is just synonymous with the existence of daily life, but at a residential level, and the government subsidies that are issued to these households that apply for them in order to use heat pump technology to convert from oil-based usage for heating of homes. With climate change and places like in Canada, they're not getting hot in the summer, so this is a well sought after technology. Are you looking at Canada as a potential customer? Because the federal government is issuing subsidies to households there. Is that something that you consider? Is that even an opportunity for you?
Yeah, absolutely. It's a great question, and Canada is a target market for us for that reason. Now, our heat pump takes heat out of the factory, so it doesn't actually take heat from the air, so it actually doesn't matter if it's cold outside, which makes it even better for Canada, because whether at manufacturing facilities in Texas or whether it's in Calgary, the temperature of the fumes coming out of its exhaust stack is the same. It works well for us. But from the, we'll call it like societal wherewithal to deploy technologies like this. We do see that strong in Canada, and that's attractive for us. And then also, energy economics is a big thing when it comes to heat pumps or any electrification, right? Of course, you get a heat pump, you get an electric car, you want to see cheap electricity. And in places like Quebec, with huge amounts of hydroelectricity, electricity is very cheap. And then, so our target markets are Canada, and of course, the U.S. We're an American company at the end of the day. And then we're also targeting Europe quite heavily. In Europe, Americans don't always know this, but gas costs somewhere between 3 and 5 times more in Europe than it does here. I mean, natural gas costs 3 to 5 times more in Europe than it does in America. Whereas electricity prices are pretty similar. So that difference, it's a lot more expensive to burn gas to make steam in Europe than it is here.
Hello. So question to you is, like you said, you have this habit, you were not delegating the work and you felt like, oh, I should do this. So I had the same thing, right? So when I was working at a startup, and I bootstrapped it, I did a freelance project, got the money, hired people, and over the time, I built this habit, and I thought, it was just me, that if I delegate work, I felt, oh, I can do this faster. So I used to take it myself. I did this for years. Now, coming here until I thought it was a habit only then, but here I'm working for the student jobs, and I have to delegate tasks, and I still feel the same way, like, oh, this is the social media habit. I could have done this better or faster. But then, how do you get out of this mindset?
Have kids? No, I think it's really just a matter of when there just is too much to do and you can't possibly do it all, and it's all important, then you're just forced to figure out how can you delegate. Some things you don't need to do yourself, even if you could do it faster. So that's one thing. Another thing is really important is the team. Like bringing on and building a team that you trust to do a great job. And then the acknowledgement that everyone's human, so they're not necessarily going to do a great job 100%, but you're human as well, and you make mistakes, I make mistakes, right? And so, even if we did it ourselves, it won't always be perfect. And so, when we bring on people that we trust, the vast majority of the time, it's going to be better than if we did it ourselves. And then, that knowledge of being actually, it wouldn't be better if I did this myself. You're better at this, and you're faster. And when I was much earlier stage, maybe when I was working on that solar thing, I remember spending countless hours in a basement. I was working in a basement at the time, trying to design this injection molded mirror. And I was not an injection molding designer. I spent so much time doing that, and it wasn't looking back. That wasn't time I spent. I should have spent a little bit of money and hired an injection molding designer and designed that parts of it, because that's what they do. They're good at it. It was silly for me to do that myself.
Any last questions? Okay. All right, let's give a round of applause for Dr. Arun Gupta. And with that, we are now concluding the second Charlie's TED Talk. Thank you so much for everyone attending here today. I hope you learned a lot. We got some great takeaways from Arun's journey from an entrepreneurship standpoint and as a technologist as well. Feel free to reach out to us if you would like to support the program moving forward. Thank you so much again for your time today. Let's give Charlie one more.
Since I promised the dinner and free drinks, please Arvia. Are you here? Yes, Arvia is working with Center of Asian Studies. They arrange almost everything here. So ask her, can you stand up? Ask her where is the restaurant, okay? We started at, we reserved 8 o'clock, so now it's 7:30, right? So you have time, okay, to ask, you will have more opportunity to ask personal questions, anything about Dr. Gupta, okay? Yeah, in a more casual environment, yeah. And that's what you are looking for, maybe. So, what's next? We're going to continue this Charles Tech Talk. Today is in the Center of Asian Studies at UTD. That's the starting point. My vision is to everywhere. It could be any places. I believe it's a good, nice forum and platform for us to talk about technology and humanity. And that's also Dr. Gray's vision. Yeah. And he has done a lot of UTD. So if you have the interest to start somewhere, talk to us. We can work together, help you. Let's do it, make it as a tradition. I personally like to see it's more like a TED Talk. All white. Okay? And that's happening starting from here. It could be annual event, could be quarterly event, could be semi-annual event. Let's bring all the intelligent people shooting for better life. Yeah. And Dr. Craig has something to say? Yes.
Well, on a different note, this was wonderful. Thank you. We're an international center, so heck, I'll invite you all to New Year's Eve. Next Friday at this time, we will be in the ATEC Lecture Hall, the Arts and Technology Building, celebrating. It's the Year of the Wild Horse, the Year of Charlie. Come 7th, reception at 5:30, 7:30 performance. I have a few free tickets. Happy New Year. Thank you for coming. If you want to suggest a program, wonderful. If you want to suggest a program that you'd like to fund, even more wonderful. Thank you all for coming tonight.